Tonight's a date. President Trump will meet Kim Jong-un on June 12 in Singapore. What's at stake? Let's ask Dr. Harlan Ullman, former advisor to the Pentagon, Vietnam and Persian Gulf veteran, now chairman of 2 private companies, and UPI's Arnaud de Bourgegrave, distinguished columnist. His latest book is Anatomy of Failure: Why America Loses Every War It Starts. Welcome.
Nice to be with you.
Your book title is very suggestive that the wars we are drawn into go better for us than the ones we provoke. For the benefit of our younger viewers, which was the Korean War?
The Korean War was one that we were provoked into, but we didn't win it. And that really began the series of military interventions that have not necessarily proved successful. The good news is we won the ones that counted: World War I, World War II, and the Cold War. And those we didn't start. But you take a look at what happened in Vietnam, what happened in the Persian Gulf the second time in 2003, our interventions in Libya and elsewhere. These have not succeeded in large part because we didn't know what we were doing, and we should never intervene in the first place. Sunday morning quarterbacking is always good, but you have to make sure that we make the right decisions before we get ourselves engaged.
So this Korean situation was an anomaly. We've never waited this long for closure, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like the 100 Years' War, not quite. But
right. Half as much anyway. Not so long ago, President Trump was calling their dear leader Little Rocket Man, and he was calling ours dotard, and we all had to look that up. Now, Kim has released these 3 Americans from prison there, and after the all smiles photo op, when these 2 leaders first meet, what is going to be the mood in that room?
It's probably going to be very positive, but we can't look at this meeting between Kim and President Trump in isolation. The fact that the Americans have abandoned the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with Iran, and we broke that agreement, and the tariff wars that we may have with the European Union and China are part of this. So if you just look at the Korean negotiations in isolation, I think you're making a mistake. And while there is an opportunity for some kind of breakthrough, supposing things don't work out, supposing Donald Trump makes good his threat to walk away, supposing Kim is not going to have as many concessions to make, Kim will probably say, you walked away from the JCPOA with Iran, how can I trust you? What can you do to make sure that you don't abandon this agreement? So the opportunities are great, but the risks are much greater.
Yeah, awkward timing. A Paris Accord as well. What is your word worth, right?
Of course, and the same thing with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which I think was a huge mistake in leaving, simply because it gives China a free field to run. They're in charge, and we're not engaged in that, and I think that's an error.
Yeah, any lawyer will tell you, never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. And often summit meetings make official that which has been worked out in advance. Secretary of State Pompeo has been over there twice recently. Will this summit be a set piece, or do you expect spontaneity?
Oh, I think spontaneity. I think Donald Trump feels he's a great negotiator, and I think he's going to look for hitting a home run and not a single. My guess is they will make some agreements, possibly even a peace treaty, but the really tough issues about how do you denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, because Kim is not going to give up his weapons right now. They give him a position, in his view, of strategic parity with the United States, which is the sole reason why he's negotiating. So my guess is that there will probably be great atmospherics to start celebrating something, but it will take months or years to work out how this actually proceeds. We're not going to get instant gratification from this meeting, I do not believe.
Kim is a Swiss-educated millennial.
You bet.
The youngest child in a culture that favors the eldest. Does he get a win just having the meeting? Is this legitimacy?
We underestimate Kim. He's ruthless. The North Korean regime is horrible under which to live. But Kim is smart, and he's played this diplomacy exceedingly well with the Winter Olympics in South Korea, the 2 meetings with President Moon, the meetings with China, and the fact that he released these 3 hostages. So I think everything is on his side. The question is, what will result from this meeting? And if it doesn't work, remember, it's tied intimately into the tariff issues with China and the EU and the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with Iran.
A 2-part question. What are the best and worst outcomes you foresee? How good or bad could this be?
Well, I don't foresee a really brilliant outcome. Perhaps the best would be a peace treaty that would be negotiated, some modicum of inspectors that would be allowed in the north, and a decision to withdraw American troops from the south to raise, or I should say, to reduce the tensions on the peninsula. The worst outcome is that nothing happens, diplomacy is finished. What are our options? And they're not good. And how does this then play with China? It gets back to the tariffs. It gets back to Iran. Is the United States going to impose secondary sanctions on its allies in Europe, which could split NATO? So I think you see, in essence, what I call September 10th in slow motion. On September 10th, 2001, most Americans slept well. September 11th, of course, changed the fate and future of the United States and much of the world. And given these three big events, Holland, we could be facing September 10th in slow motion if something gets unraveled. And given the fact there are so many moving parts, just one of these moving parts has to break, and it can bring the entire apparatus down.
When the date was announced the other day, it struck me as sooner than I expected, and you think not. Why?
No, because they said it was going to be within a month or two, and so I think they want to get this out of the way. Donald Trump is using this as a tremendous PR ploy.
Sure.
Obviously, there's been great discontent about abandoning the JCPOA. Trump is under great pressure with the Mueller investigation, connections with Russia. His former attorney, Michael Cohen, is in serious jeopardy. And so I think Mr. Trump would like to get a PR win someplace, and Korea may be the place to do it, or I should say Singapore, when he meets with the North and South Korean presidents.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan Ullman, for stepping into the big picture.
Thank you very much, Harlan.
What's the domestic political upshot of the Trump-Kim summit? Let's ask conservative radio and TV pundit Steve Malzberg, who joins us from RT's New York bureau. Steve, welcome back to the big picture.
Always great to be with you, Harlan.
Steve, do the math. I was born during the Korean War, and now I'm on Medicare. For that long, two sets of soldiers have been staring at each other across that 38th parallel because the war never officially ended. Even the TV show MASH ended. Was the sight of the North and South Korean leaders stepping over the line a giant step or an inconsequential photo op?
Well, I think we're not going to know until we know, until after the summit next month between Trump and Kim. But I think in the meantime, it was certainly a huge occurrence. I mean, as you just alluded to, look how long it's been going on. Look for how many decades nothing like that has ever come close to happening. As a matter of fact, recently we had soldiers from the North running across the border to get to the South and being shot at. And now all of a sudden, you know, Kim has come around. Now, why has Kim come around? One could argue it's because Donald Trump is in office, and Donald Trump, as anybody would have to admit, no matter what political side they're on, has shaken things up through his language, through his threats, through his tactics, and through his personality.
Yeah, a lot of people thought the Gipper to be a warmonger, and that might have advanced foreign policy back then. Our president called the dear leader Little Rocket Man, and he called Trump a dotard. Is that going to be water under the bridge?
Oh yeah. I mean, look how Trump has gone out of his way to say nice things about Kim. For instance, when the prisoners came home at 3 o'clock in the morning. And by the way, you know, for those who say this was all about a photo op, just think. As someone posted on my Facebook page, and it dawned on me, if they had delayed the prisoners' plane in Alaska for a few more hours, they could have had morning TV, primetime morning TV, of this event happening live. Instead, they did it in the middle of the night. So I don't know how much they were looking to make a TV bonanza out of this. They could have really done it if they wanted to. But the left is going crazy because Trump is saying kind of nice things about Kim, just like they went crazy when he called them little rocket man, and they said, oh, this is going to lead to nuclear war. So Trump cannot win.
Hey, foreign policy is not our president's strong suit, and he's not known as a detail guy. Are you confident that he will be up to speed and not just winging it, running the art of the deal playbook?
Yeah, you know, I've heard a lot of that. In a 10-minute span on CNN the other day, I think I heard, you know, how is Trump? He can't sit through a national security briefing. How's he going to learn all this? Kim is going to wipe the floor with him. And Schumer now would say, oh, he'll sign anything just to get the glory of making a deal. He's going to give away the store. He already gave away the store. He gave Kim a wet kiss by sending Pompeo over there to meet with him. Look, Trump isn't going into this alone. He's going to not sit there alone. And he's been very tough in his rhetoric going into it by saying, maybe this won't work out. Maybe I'll leave in the middle of it if I'm insulted by what's taking place. I think he's going to be well prepared. He has great people around him. And come on, you know, I'm not saying this to you, but to the left, get over it already. I mean, look at how much this man has accomplished. He's kept so many promises, and he's really going to want to keep another promise, which was to make sure North Korea cannot threaten us any longer with a nuclear weapon.
Just showing up, it's going to be like when Nixon went to China, right?
When Nixon went to China, you know, and again, you alluded to Ronald Reagan, of course, what he accomplished with Gorbachev. Yeah, I mean, just showing up, you're right, though. I mean, talk about optics. I mean, this is going to be unbelievable, given where we were just months ago with the rhetoric on both sides, to see them shake hands, sit down together. I mean, and again, those on the left that are saying, oh, this shouldn't happen, you're giving him stature, Kim, this is what he wants. Well, how else do you do it? I mean, how else do you change the status quo from decades and decades if you don't try something new? So I'm excited. I think we should all be excited, but not overly confident.
Well, as Woody Allen said, 80% of life is showing up. I got a two-part question for you, same one I asked our other guest. What are the best and worst outcomes of the Trump-Kim sit-down?
The best outcome is denuclearization. North Korea decides for various reasons, because the sanctions have squeezed them. They know the sanctions will continue to squeeze them. China has probably played a part in that as well, behind the scenes. And Kim says, okay, you know, we want to join the rest of the world, and peace comes. Then they denuclearize, and there's peace between North Korea and South Korea, no more threat to the U.S., blah, blah, blah. The worst thing that could happen, I guess, is that Kim is trying to pull a fast one, and maybe they do agree to something at the table, but then they break their agreement, as they've done so many times, and we have to act. Or all hell breaks loose at the table, and Trump walks out. So there's a lot of risk here. But again, we have to keep our fingers crossed.
I've only got time for a true or false on this because we're out of time. But doesn't Kim come into this with an advantage because he got the meeting?
False.
Ever in character. Thank you, Steve Malzberg of The Steve Malzberg Show.